I was raised in a Christian family, and I started going to Sunday school very early in life, raised in a conservative Presbyterian church. The message I received from my church upbringing was that the top of the pyramid was missionary, pastor, seminary. Those kind of things were all the top of the pyramid. If you're really going to be a valid man, you're going to be in ministry. That's where you've got to head. And work is second rate. That's somehow you're missing your calling if you're in a secular job. I had applied to seminary and was ready to go to seminary. But it was kind of that waking up moment of, why am I going to seminary? Is this really what God intended for me to do in life?
Matt and I met at 17 years of age at a Christian conference center, and I was intrigued by him.
As I finally was able to back away from all the noise of all those years, if I just went forward, it was just going to be doing what everyone else thought I should do, rather than what I really truly believe God wanted me to do.
We met and parted, and a few years later ended up on the same college campus. And from that moment on, became best of friends.
This deeper journey of trying to figure out my life story in relation to work and career came to a point where I applied to business school.
He went to a different college, I went to a different college, but we stayed best friends for 10 years.
I was thinking, I'm going to business school? This has got to be something totally apart from what I would have thought I would have been doing with my life.
He traveled around with a music group. I went as a nurse to Africa, lived in Norway for a while. And it wasn't until we landed back in San Diego at the same time that romance started. And it was wonderful, wonderful.
Kim and I got married, and I started realizing, my gosh, I've married the woman of my dreams, but what does that mean for our life going forward? How am I going to provide for my wife and my family?
Why is it that in Christian community, missionaries or pastors or people that are in ministry, somehow the language is that they're far more spiritual than the rest of us that are just out there working?
I was running a mountaineering shop, I was working construction, and I was a musician. And none of these things were going to, provide for a wife and children in a context that felt like, I'm really taking care of my family.
God was gracious enough to let us get pregnant on our first year anniversary.
Duke Business School accepted me. That felt like, well, if I do business school for a couple of years, I could come out with a decent job on the other side, and that would be a great provision for my wife and my children.
Getting an MBA was something to please me, something to give us direction. Because he knew darn well I wouldn't just move to Colorado so he could drum in the mountains. That just wasn't on the radar.
It also represented a great adventure. It allowed Kim and I to get out of Southern California and to go really solidify our marriage, in the context of a couple of fun years of being at graduate school.
Matt graduated with his MBA, and we got our first house and first job, and we were in a marvelous Christian community. We continued to have baby boy after baby boy, 5 boys later.
And I went into a full-blown corporate career for 13 to 15 years, something like that, with GTE Corporation. Those years, I think I was growing in my understanding of no matter what career we're in, we're all in ministry.
Matt had been with corporate America, climbing the corporate ladder for 13 years or so.
There were definitely those days where I was feeling lost. Felt like a wilderness being in a corporate job.
We were involved in wonderful things, and life was really, really good. But both of us felt, I think, a restlessness in our spirit.
Both Kim and I started having questions as to, is there something more?
Matt and I have always prayed together.
We started having conversations between ourselves. Is this all that God called us to do and be?
I knew I married a man with a pastor's heart. I knew that wasn't where he's fulfilled, but he did the right thing and just providing for us.
Wonderful church, wonderful friends, wonderful schools. Everything was good. Great job, great house.
And then we had baby number 5. Let's not change anything else.
There were several miracles that had to happen to get us to actually budge out of our autopilot life.
When Keaton was 4, he's our last little one, God opened up the timing for Matt to go to seminary.
Through community counsel, through friends and family around us, we unplugged from corporate America. So that's when we went to Regent College in Vancouver.
When we drove into Vancouver, I got that sense of, God, you are breaking apart the life we've known, and you're starting something new.
We took our 5 children with us. Very difficult journey in many, many ways.
For the 10 years that I knew Matt before getting married, I knew there was this pastor's wild mountain man drummer in there.
We also went through a very difficult season at Regent where came close to divorce. You know, wonderful thing. Go to seminary, get divorced.
It was just really scary because I thought, we've got 5 kids and our life as we know it is going to drastically change.
I loved studying at Regent.
I saw my husband just come alive.
I do very well in Regent. I love graduate studies. It was wonderful for me. For Kim, it represented, who did I marry? Did I marry a guy who would be happy studying God's Word in a seminary?
It's an interesting mix of emotions because I love that man and I loved seeing him come alive. And I hated it.
Kim felt like she was losing her life while I felt like I was gaining a new life.
I wanted, and I did in my heart run through the halls of that seminary saying, get a job and quit studying God's Word. What good is that?
It got to the point where we felt like there was just one thread between us as a couple, and that was Jesus. That couldn't be cut, but it was one of the most difficult times of our entire marriages, was to get to that point where we didn't know what we were doing, where we were going, why we were there. It's just the total abyss of relationship.
It highlighted our differences back to when we had first met, and I remember thinking we could never be together. Look at this wild mountain man that has a pastor's heart, and I am a corporate girl that's going to be president of a company one day, so this does not go together.
We hung on because of that golden thread of Jesus between us in our marriage.
God had brought us so far in that year that I was ready to stay another year, to have Matt finish his second year there.
We saw God really speaking to us through our children, that Vancouver was a toxic place for a teenager. And we felt to save our children, we needed to leave Vancouver.
Within 48 hours, we made the decision to leave there, go back to North Carolina for the sake of our second son entering that high school.
I loved my experience at Regent, both the academics and the culture and the community, all those things feels like home.
I saw Matt sacrifice in a huge, huge way.
We had to disengage at a time when I was really believing I had found what God had for me.
Corporate America held for him a really dry desert. And again, I was so proud of him because he chose, again, to serve us and serve his kids without knowing what was coming.
That was so hard for me to let go of the longer journey that we thought we were going to have at Regent.
And at that point, I was so praying God would open up something much better for Matt.
So I left behind my dreams of Regent, my dreams of further study in God's Word.
A completely shattered dream and a 180-degree turn from what we thought that coming year was going to be.
So coming out of that for Kim and I, going back to North Carolina, waiting on the Lord, wondering if we were going to have another corporate career, I was recruited to come back with GTE to go into their corporate office in Dallas, but we really strongly felt we were to wait.
We didn't know what was going to happen. I remember telling Matt, you know, he had his Durango and a little U-Haul on the back, and I said, be back the end of September for Colton's birthday, but take the time you need to process this.
We believe we're following God, and we believe that He is directing our way and that He's pulling us forward. We're making tough decisions.
I just knew it was temporary. And sure enough, it was. Because Vance and Steve called Matt in January, and they said, you better be sitting down because we'd like you to move here.
We get the call to come to Colorado, and it is no question that it's ministry.
I said, Matt, I would never move there unless it was a great moving package. So if you're going to go be a wild mountain man and drum your drums in the mountain, these are my things. So, and don't you know, God answered every single one of those. So.
And then it all falls apart. The ministry is not able to survive, and that's when the ship really hits the sand.
A lot happened in those few years in this ministry of Foundation of the Heart. Matt's brother had committed suicide, and 9/11 happened, and when that broke apart, that was one of those heartbreaks you just never want to experience.
I'm thinking, followed you, God. I've drugged my wife and kids through all of this. What in the world? You know, this was supposed to be a life of community, and the ministry was going to be awesome, and I was going to get to use my business skills, but now it's all gone.
Then comes the next train wreck. Not only did we go through the ministry divorce, but we go through unemployment. My next big, horrible, like this just doesn't happen.
We all were out on the street looking for work.
We prayed together every day. We sought community. You can't get by without that. You just can't.
Started applying for jobs, really believed that I had skill bases and education. And
long interviews over months that seemed a good fit for him.
One after the other, it did not work out.
I just knew it was killing him.
I can remember a time when Kim and I are just out in a wilderness park, sitting on a rock and just sobbing together because we have no idea what God is up to, and it feels like we've been abandoned. In our early years as Foundation of the Heart, we did retreats for couples, families, generational retreats, men and women. We believed we could offer a retreat that would help those men in their journey. We came together as a team again in a different context, and we started doing what we called Band of Brothers retreats.
I look at who Matt is, and his heart is about connecting with men.
We set a really good table, is what we say, in a Band of Brothers retreat, for the Lord to show up and for men to get deeper in touch with what God's doing in their hearts.
I was thrilled to hear of something that was for men.
We needed it, and we were able to offer that to other men in these retreats.
Matt gets a call to go meet his good buddy Keith up at Bear Trap Ranch. Matt goes up there to just meet up with Keith because Keith had moved away.
Something is happening with InterVarsity and their ownership of Bear Trap Ranch.
While Matt was up there just happened to be this meeting.
Meet with the transition manager, Ray Schnickels. Spend a couple hours with him talking about Band of Brothers, Foundation of the Heart, what we have done in ministry for the last 10 years.
Happened to be these men that have heard of Band of Brothers.
And unbeknownst to me, he has encountered Band of Brothers 3 years earlier, and they're actually looking for an organization to take over the running and operations of Bear Trap Ranch.
I wasn't, oh, isn't this awesome? I was like, are you kidding? In this economy, we don't want a camp. I don't care if they're giving us a camp.
From a day of going up to take a hike at Bear Trap Ranch, 5 months later, after extensive due diligence on the part of InterVarsity and Band of Brothers, we find ourselves having Bear Trap Ranch donated to our ministry.
To have Matt be the point person in this whole thing is God's humor and love and grace to my wild mountain man, because it's taken everything he's built for, his training, his experiences, his love of God's creation. It's a gift. It's just a gift to who Matt is.